What's up, guys? I'm your boy Meatloaf, and we're just going to get right into it. I'm going to be reacting to the Steelers versus Bears game today. I went to bed once the game was over, so I'm doing my reaction right now. But before we begin, I'd just like to say that the Steelers got very lucky. This game, the first half, they played pretty well. Towards the end, you could see they were starting to slip their foot off the gas a little bit. But other than that, I mean, they played a pretty solid first half, very respectable first half, and the casual fan's going to think, oh, this is going to be a game that isn't close, but let me tell you, that's not what I was thinking. I knew this game was going to be a close game, regardless of the referees, and that's what we're going to talk about first. We're going to talk about the obvious first. We'll get into what happened in the game later, but first we're going to talk about the officiating, because let me tell you, unlike other Steelers fans, I myself find this officiating to be an utter embarrassment to the game of football. Okay? And I understand everyone needs to accept this fact that both teams, at least once a game, are going to have a pretty questionable call that's called against them, or maybe not called, that the casual fan or just anyone looking at home is going to be like, oh, why did they call that? Or, oh, why didn't they call that? That was BS. That happens at least once to one team every single game. But today, with the Chicago Bears, it happened so much, right? The Bears, they made some mistakes. Some of the penalties, obviously they didn't play a perfect game. Some penalties were actually penalties. But other penalties, very highly questionable, okay? In the second, I believe it was the second quarter, I could be wrong, but the Bears, they got a field goal. Their first points of the game was a field goal. That should have been a touchdown. That play to Jimmy Graham, that was a touchdown. That was a terrible call. The Bears should have an extra 4 points added to their final score of the game because obviously a touchdown is 4 more points than the field goal, so you just add 4. But first of all. Second of all, that taunting penalty. My take on that. Now, I think from the textbook definition of taunting, I feel like the penalty is very debatable. All right? Some people are going to try to tell you, that based off of the physical definition of taunting, that it was BS. And although I do think that the textbook definition of taunting is BS, if you're going off of what the definition, the NFL rule says that taunting is, I would say that if you were to put 10 people in a room and they were to look at that play, I think at least one of them would say it's taunting. However, I'm just making this clear. I do think it was a BS call, okay? The man's allowed to celebrate, and yes, he was staring at them, and I do believe that you can taunt without verbally saying anything, but I don't think anything that he did was excessive to the point that he was just insulting the other team to the point where you just physically could not take it anymore, and he was just being an a-hole. That's not what was happening, okay? The rule is BS. Now, going off of the rule, the call is still very questionable. It's not as, I don't think it's as terrible as people make it seem to be based off of just the idea of what the textbook definition of taunting is, but nevertheless, the textbook definition of taunting is way too soft, okay? That's not taunting. It's not. Maybe off of the textbook definition, maybe 1 out of every 10 people is going to say it's taunting, but let me tell you something. The textbook definition is what's BS, and therefore the call is BS, okay? The Steelers, they could have done things differently, so what we should be... Okay, if the Steelers were not the type of team that they are, the team that looks dominant, they put their foot off the gas, and then they win by like 3 points, because it's just the classic Mike Tomlin way, especially against teams that are inferior. Now, the Bears aren't super inferior to us, but nevertheless, the Steelers, at least as of late, did look like the better team. But what we should be talking about, if the Steelers did not go full Steeler mode and decide that we were just going to put our foot off the gas, if we had not made costly errors such as the Ray McLeod fumble, and just the play calling took a step back today. It was very bad. Okay, it took a step down today. It's been improving slowly. It took a step backward today, unfortunately. So the Steelers could have done things to make it so right now I should be saying, oh, the Steelers won by, at least 2 possessions, and yeah, the officiating was bad, and the Bears should have had more points, so the margin of victory would have been narrower, but at the end of the day, the Steelers still win. But that's not what happened, okay? The Steelers allowed the Bears to crawl back in this game. The officiating, clearly, whether they were trying to or not, definitely had calls that weren't called or calls that were called that went in favor of Pittsburgh. to an extent where it almost felt, especially in the fourth quarter, it almost felt as if it was scripted. Like, it almost felt that, and I don't believe this happened, but it almost felt that they were trying to get the Steelers to win, right? Like they had some sort of personal bias. Like, I don't know if they truly did or didn't, but what I do know is that it kind of felt like a movie at the end, because everything that could be called against the Bears would be called against the Bears. And that is absolutely pathetic on the NFL's part. That was an embarrassment of officiating game, right? You see, like, the Jesse James play, that was terrible. That was terrible officiating. That's a terrible rule, right? Just like taunting right now. But that's just one play. No, today, it was a whole combination of plays that all went in favor of the Steelers, right? That's not okay. In my opinion, a full game like that is more embarrassing than one play like that. Both of them are costly, and both of them are just downright an embarrassment. But nevertheless, I feel that 5 calls like that is worse than one play like the Jesse James one. So just to get that out of the way. But instead of talking about how the margin of victory should be narrower, this win almost feels as if it's a dirty win. Because from an honest standpoint, if you add those 4 points onto the Bears' score from that touchdown to the field goal, the Bears win by 2. But now some Steelers fans are going to tell me, well, if Ray McCloud didn't fumble, valid point, I may add, valid point. However, here's my opinion on that. I don't think it is something that should be used. Because even though it's easy to just say, oh, well, if this didn't happen, we win by 2 possessions. It did happen. That's all that matters, okay? A team's successes and a team's failures all have to do with exactly that, the team. Unless if it's interfered with officiating, which the McCloud play was not, then the failure of the Steelers fumbling that football and giving up the touchdown is on the Steelers. No different than if they scored a touchdown and he returned it for a touchdown or something like that, right? If he returned it for a touchdown, everyone would be saying that was all Ray McCloud. And they wouldn't say, oh, disregard that, because you could easily get a tackle just as easily as you can't fumble the football, as you don't fumble the football, pardon me. But whenever it's negative, we just say, oh, if that didn't happen. No, it happened. Okay, so I get your point. I understand what you're trying to say. But in my opinion, I find it to be not necessary to just take away points like that. The Steelers earned that fumble because they were the ones who committed it. And despite the fact that, yes, it's easy to just say we eliminate that and those 4 points don't matter, guess what? In the situation of the game, that had nothing to do with the refs. That had something to do with Ray McCloud. The Steelers helped the Bears. The Steelers shot themselves in the foot. And therefore, those 4 points do indeed play a bigger factor in the final score. You see, the Steelers, if they would have had better play calling, and yes, if McCloud had not fumbled that punt, that certainly would have helped. If we don't pull our foot off the gas, and just decide to keep pushing and keep going at them, keep putting the nail in the coffin, but we never do that. We get too conservative whenever we're up by 2 possessions. It's something that this team has done for years. Doesn't matter if we have Antonio Brown. It doesn't matter if we have a more defensive-minded team like we do now. Yes, the offense is playing better, but this is still a defense-first team. It doesn't matter who we have. It just seems that almost every single time, whenever we're playing a team, especially teams that are inferior to us, and we go up by a pretty large margin, I'd say 2 possessions, more than 9 points. 9 times out of 10, heck, 99 times out of 100, we take our foot off the gas and we win in a close game. Or sometimes we lose. Right? That's very disappointing because, yes, the Bears made some mistakes themselves, and yes, the penalties, I'm not talking about the penalties that were BS. The Bears did legitimately make some mistakes that were actual mistakes down the road that could have helped them win despite the refs basically being against them, but they didn't, and that part's on the Chicago Bears. But that's no different with the Steelers. You see, if the Steelers would have executed better, wouldn't have been so conservative. I get you don't want to throw 50-yard passes down the field and give them an extra 10 possessions in the second half. But if you play that conservative with that type of play calling that we were running and the predictability of the play calling that we were running and just simply the incompetence that especially the play calling was showing in the second half, if the Steelers would have just done a better job doing that, like I said earlier, then right now I would be talking about how the Steelers won, and they won by a fairly sizable margin a margin that's big enough to say, oh, well, the Bears, yes, they should have scored these points, but the Steelers still would have won. It just would have been a narrow margin. But that's not what we're talking about, because there is a very valid argument, and honestly, a point that I cannot disagree with, that the Bears would have won this game if the officiating was correctly called. And honestly, they deserved to win it the way we played in the second half. They looked like the better team. Justin Fields, he gained more confidence as the game went on, and quite literally, this Steelers team always finds a way to give you a heart attack. It doesn't matter who they play. I'm honestly scared to play the Lions because either we're going to blow them out. That's obviously an option, right? That's what the media is going to say probably. No. I'm a true Steelers fan, okay? I know, and I hope I'm wrong, but in my heart of hearts, that will be a closer game than it should be. Even if we win by 10, 13 points, that's closer than what it should be, right? I'm okay with that as long as we win, right? And obviously, Steelers, they had good plays this game that didn't have to do with the referees, like those touchdowns, like, to Freiermuth and the touchdowns to, Najee Harris, all that stuff, that was earned by the Steelers. However, the Bears had points taken away from them, and they had the ball taken away from them at times, such as the taunting penalty, which I don't agree with the textbook definition of taunting, therefore I do find that to be BS. But I just feel like there's a very valid argument that the Bears should have won this game, right? And the Steelers are the better team in my opinion, but not the better team doesn't always win. And I feel like last night the Bears, there's a very valid argument, and I do not disagree with it, that the Bears should have won that game. Now, am I saying that you shouldn't hold your head high? Absolutely not, right? A win's a win, okay? Like, I don't think people in the locker room like Najee Harris should be sitting with their head down because of something that the referees did or didn't call that they know damn well helped the Bears. Because they won. A win's a win. I'm taking the win, Of course I'm going to take this win. I mean, they played decent. Second half, not so much. Probably because of the overly conservative play calling. And just because, the defense usually always in the second half, the first drive, maybe the first two drives, they come out flat, especially that first drive. I have no idea why that happens. But the Steelers, they could have done things themselves to make it so these calls that went in their favor that were clearly BS and I am not running away from wouldn't matter, and it would just decrease the margin of victory. But that didn't happen. So if the Steelers lose, which they deserve to, it would be their fault. Okay, and the Bears, I usually don't like people blaming the refs for games. I think it's exaggerated most of the time, but this time I think it's a very valid argument, and it's one that I would say definitely influenced the outcome of the game. Now that we're done talking about the referees, from my just honest standpoint, we're going to talk about what went good for the Steelers, because obviously the refs don't have to do with, Najee Harris's performance or anything like that. Obviously you can say, oh, well, Brandon, there was a holding that they didn't call, stuff like that, right? But we're just getting into the straight analytics of what happened. Basically, that's all I'm trying to say. So Najee Harris, he had a very solid game. He did what he had to do when he was called upon to do it, and he did a pretty good job doing that. That kid is special. Pat Freiermuth, he had himself a great game. You saw pictures with him with Heath Miller before the game. I love the Muth chance that they have going down, and he looks like the tight end of the future. I'm so glad we drafted him from Penn State. I was one of the rarities of Steelers fans that thought that was a great pick in the second round. I understand wanting to go for a lineman. He is a lineman in a sense because he blocks, but he's also a great receiver. And he embodies a Pittsburgh Steeler, in my opinion. Okay, I feel like Pat Freiermuth, he embodies the Pittsburgh Steelers organization and what they at least paint themselves to be, because let's be honest, that's sometimes used as an excuse for Tomlin saying the standard is the standard. You know what else is the standard in this city? Apparently the standard is taking control of a game and crapping your pants and deciding that we're just gonna not call anything other than the most conservative plays that I've seen that might be more conservative than Donald Trump. Okay, that's how bad it is. That's another standard they're creating. We don't talk about that. But Pat Freiermuth, absolutely spectacular game. The rookies came out to play tonight. Okay, they came out to play. The offensive line, average game, all that you can really expect from them. Right? Chase Claypool, he went out with an injury. He does this a whole lot of times in recent weeks. He has a minor injury. He misses the rest of the game. most of the time. Then he comes back the next week, he's fine. He might miss a day of practice at most. And I hope that's the case now. I certainly hope. But either way, I so hope that he can heal quickly with whatever's going down. Roethlisberger, pretty solid game. Like I said, I don't expect that man to be anything more than a game manager at this point. He's definitely improved since the beginning of the year, along with the rest of this offense. Deontay Johnson, he had some, pretty clutch catches whenever you need him to catch that ball. He was going to catch it. And like I said, the defense. This is a defense. This team is defense first. T.J. Watt, amazing game. All right, he missed. If I remember correctly, I know he missed at least one. I'm pretty sure he missed 2 games due to an injury, and he is at this time. I believe he's a half sack away from Myles Garrett from the NFL sack leader from having the most sacks in the league. That's very impressive. Now, I'm not the type of person that likes to compare, people saying, oh, is Watt better or is Garrett better? No, appreciate their talent. They are both very, very talented players. All right, we're not going to compare the two. But I do believe that if Watt played those extra 2 weeks, he'd have at least half a sack. So the fact that he's even in the top 5 after missing 2 games is just a testament to how talented this man is. Right, Cameron Hayward, he got his second interception of his career. He got one on Monday Night Football against the Giants in week 1 of last week. He got another one today. He's having himself a career year, and considering he's been in Pittsburgh for almost a decade, and he's had Pro Bowl level seasons every single time he's played and hasn't been injured, definitely a testament to how good this man's season is, right? The rest of the defense, pretty solid overall. Every now and then you'd see a lapse in coverage, which, it happens. I really wish they could clean those things like that up. But just don't come out in the second half the way you do. They come out so flat in the first drive of the second half. I absolutely have no idea why. That's the only time Cleveland scored a touchdown last week, too. And the Bears, they just took it and ran with it, basically. But, like I said, officiating, I hate it whenever officiating has to do with the outcome of a game. And I understand some Steelers fans are like, well, there have been calls made against us in the past that have prevented us from winning the game. Okay, let me start here. The calls like the Jesse James catch or that Travis Benjamin touchdown in 2018 where the offensive tackle took like 5 steps before the snap started and there was no false start called and they scored a touchdown off of it because Joe Hayden was surprised that even happened and that the play was still going on. I get all of that, right? Now, here's my other point to that argument. They would have won if those penalties were called the correct way. I understand that. But the Steelers, in all of those games, you're going to see a point where the Steelers messed up and they could have done something differently so that way that wouldn't matter. That's something that they should have done tonight as well. You see, they should have won by more than 2 points. They should have not played so conservative. McLeod tries to do too much, fumbles the ball, Bears get a touchdown, right? All of those things, if the Steelers do differently, we wouldn't be talking about how the Bears should have won. We would be talking about how the Steelers should have won by less points. But that's not what we're talking about. So I understand your argument, Steelers fans, and not all, but some. They say it's about time that the officiating favors us to an extent. No, I don't like to see the officiating favor everyone, okay? Jesse James calls BS. The Travis Benjamin stuff's BS. All the stuff that they are pointing out is BS. But you know what else is BS? And you know what else isn't deserved? What happened to Chicago Bears last night? Okay, that was a monstrosity of an officiating game for the officials. And my goodness, I don't care if it benefited my team. I hate to see that. As a fan of the NFL, that is an utter embarrassment. The league needs to change the taunting rules. I'll add that. They need to change the taunting rules. And they truly should have won this game. The Steelers should have won despite the penalties that should not have happened that would have added more points to the Bears' score. But that's not what happened because we don't do that around here apparently. So now we're sitting here in a predicament where it's very easy to say that the Bears should have won based off of penalties and based off of things that were called and some things that were not called. And I find that to be a valid argument. Now, am I putting this team down? No. And I'm not trying to put dirt on this win, although I think it's very easy to do so. And to be honest, it kind of does feel like a dirty win. I hated it whenever calls went against the Steelers like that they were just clear BS. So imagine what happens now whenever we're the benefiting end from that. It feels terrible, okay? I don't like that feeling. And as a fan of the NFL, that officiating was an utter embarrassment. I am truly sorry to Chicago Bears fans out there, and you definitely have my condolences. I hope Justin Fields does well for you. I hope your season turns around because you easily could have 4 wins. You could easily have number 4 in the win column right now, Chicago Bears fans. With that being said, a win is a win. I'm happy that my team won in the fashion at which they did so, and with the help of the refs, like I said, it kind of makes it feel like a dirty win. And I'm not the type of fan that's going to sit here and cry about the refs, whether my team is the receiving end and benefiting from it, or if they're the end that's not benefiting from it. But what I will say is that there are things the Steelers could have done differently. So even if those things were called correctly, they still could have won this football game. But that's not what we're looking at. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Definitely a very interesting game. I just about lost 15 years off of my life, and I'm being serious. I'm now a man who's probably married and has kids at this point because that's the age that the Steelers have put me at. So that's just absolutely spectacular. But I hope you guys have a great day. That was not from an officiating standpoint, but from a standpoint of how everyone had to hold their breath at the end for that final field goal. That was an entertaining game of football, and it does feel like a dirty win. The officiating needs to be better. I don't care what side it benefits. That was an embarrassment to football as a whole. Not just as a Steelers fan, as a whole. That was an embarrassment to the game of football. That officiating crew did an absolutely terrible job. And I don't like to bring people down like that, but that's exactly what they did. A terrible job. Steelers go on next week to play the Lions, and let's hope that the Steelers can win without controversial calls that were being called in their favor and actually win by at least 2 possessions in at least a somewhat convincing fashion against an inferior team. Thanks, guys. I love you guys. Thanks for watching.